Welcome, everyone. We'll give you all a moment to join in here. Welcome, welcome. Giving one more person there a chance to get their audio. There we go. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining Yoga and Recovery Chats today. My name is Melanie Taylor. I am the Director of Education and a facilitator at Eat, Breathe, Thrive. We are a nonprofit organization that aims to prevent and help people recover from eating disorders by providing skills and resources for mindful eating, emotional resilience, and positive embodiment. And I'd love to welcome my co-facilitator to share a bit about herself.
Hi, I'm Jewel. I'm a support leader with ANAD, a nonprofit organization that offers free peer support to anyone dealing with eating disorders, disordered eating, or body image issues. To remind everyone, we'll have about half an hour of group conversation followed by a half an hour yoga class. As everyone is joining, here are some housekeeping guidelines. Please keep your mics off unless you're speaking, and feel free to use the chat if you are more comfortable. We are recording, but your video feeds and names will not be displayed. And you can review the community guidelines as well, which I believe should be in the chat.
I will pop that into the chat here. Oh, I'm echoing. My apologies. Let me hold that out here and see if that's a bit better. I'm actually going to switch microphones for a moment. There we go. And I'll move back to the other one when I lead yoga. Okay. So the community guidelines, I'll pop in the chat here for you. So if you haven't had a chance to pre-read it. So we're about to start. And so I want to do that check-in. So in the chat box, I've put in what's in the check-in because I always find it's like, remember it, then you can't remember it. So why don't you share your name, where you are in the world, include any pronouns that are important that we use with you today. And our check-in question is, what boundaries have you found are essential in your recovery? So while you guys are answering that, I'm curious, I'd like to hear from you what's been really important for you in your own recovery, Joel?
For me, it's making sure that I think for me it's particularly with family, and it's making sure that I let them know what I'm comfortable with, what I'm not comfortable with. A big boundary I've set is like I don't like diet talk. I don't like talks around like if we can exclude that kind of stuff. Um, Body related talk from a table setting or from just conversation in general, because that's a boundary I need to set for myself of just like not having things that just can cause my, the eating disorder voice to be louder.
Yeah, it's like you're not having the echo inside and outside of that same sort of conversation. I really love that. Yeah, I think for me, there's been um, a lot of like really being open to be able to hear my feedback about how their communication is impacting me. I think that's been something about starting to build that dialogue. So for the boundary for me is like open dialogue. You can share and I can share. But also to recognize that there's some hard no's, and those hard no's, like as you're sharing, like just no diet conversation, um, no discussion about what I am or am not putting on my plate. Those are hard no's. And but they're also allowed to have hard no's. So that's why I like that like mutual dialogue of like, hey, that's a hard no for me. And I don't have to explain it or validate it or explain why that's important, anything like that.
Totally. I love what you said about that. The open
Yeah.
dialogue was super important for me with my parents in particular, was just making sure that we were both being open and honest with each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we've got a couple shares in the chat box. So I want to open it up as well. If you want to share your answer, again, you're being recorded, so your voice would be recorded, but your video would not. So you're welcome to have your video on throughout the session. But if there's something you wanted to share in our discussion, please put your hand up, virtual or otherwise. If your camera's off, I can't see your non-virtual hand or your real hand. But yeah, let us know if you want to share anytime throughout the discussion. Um, so Katie here has said neither are easy, but trying to prioritize meal snack times when in the middle of helping others or socializing with others and telling others this need, and also to others to not talk about diets restricting, compensating with exercise, etc. And I think that's a really important one. Not all the things that can really impact us are food related. They can be exercise, compensatory behavior, that kind of thing as well. Virginia shared a boundary founding that she found essential was putting recovery equal to what I want to do for my family. Oh, yeah, valuing yourself as much as you value caring for, making it easy for your family, or being with them. Such a great one. Holly here has shared staying focused on the plan set by you and your dietitian, deflecting unsolicited advice. Yeah, really beautiful. I'm just reading through. You guys are great. There's so much great content, like what you're sharing here. And there's also some really great similarities here as well. Um, yeah, and not being sure how to answer that question. I think that's like really honest. I don't think we always know what those boundaries need to be. I think sometimes I have to change them. That's where that dialogue for me is so important, that with each person or just the state that they're in or the state that I am, we might need to adjust or communicate some of those. Yeah, Cami, did you want to share there?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in. Hi everyone. It's really nice to meet you all. I'm calling in from Chicago. I think the boundary that I'm having a hard time setting is with myself and mainly with the part of me that I consider to be my eating disorder. I've done a lot of work and I have done a really good job of setting boundaries with the people in my circle, saying like, hey, this is not what I want to talk about, et cetera, et cetera. But I think like part of the reason that I'm here today is that I'm going through my yoga therapy teacher training and I'm having a really hard time with the program. It's incredibly steeped in diet culture and it just feels way more of an undertaking energetically for me to like try and change that or change my teacher's mind. He's very, very set. And so I think I have a hard time with those moments where I hear something from someone that I know is scientifically just incorrect. But my eating
Yeah.
disorder has that moment of like, haha, see, I told you. Um, And those moments, especially when they're coming from someone that I'm supposed to trust, someone that I'm supposed to respect, someone who's supposed to know a lot about this,
Mm,
including like doctors and like medical professionals, it gets really, really hard to stay rooted in like my own understanding of like what is best for me. And also just
mm,
like what the research says, like actually says.
yeah. Thanks for being really straight and real with that. I think I'm a yoga teacher trainer myself, and I think this is a really challenging thing. I think yoga, in the work that we do at Eat, Breathe, Thrive, yoga is a foundation of it's the vehicle we use to teach some of the skills that can help us with recovery. But that's not to say all yoga is doing that. In fact, yoga can also be as harmful as it can be helpful. I think that whether it's in yoga or any other part of our society, diet culture is very well entrenched, especially in Ayurveda, which is the science that's often used in yoga to do that. So I'm sorry you're going through that. I'm having like an internal moment. Um, don't be afraid to share us with them. We'd be happy to help with that, and not have to be the one only advocating for safer spaces in yoga. But to your point, there's a lot of being able to recognize that your thoughts, and especially the ed thoughts, going to do what ed thoughts do, but that also there's this like, I know what's good for me, and putting a boundary that I don't need to accept that advice or to accept that cue. Um, but we have to hold our leaders and teachers accountable. That doesn't mean we have to say something. It means that in our minds, we can take them off the pedestal and recognize they're human beings that don't always have the right thing to say. Jill, anything you want to share about that? I'm sure that's something that you've been around a lot in support groups.
Yeah, and support, and even in my own personal life of teaching, I teach dance, so it's not the same as yoga, but I do understand the kind of talk around diet that happens. I think you made a really good point about like not putting them on a pedestal and kind of realizing that like people are people, we're human beings, we make mistakes, we don't always say the right things, and knowing that like your truth is your truth and like holding on to that and kind of remembering I mean for me it's repeating a mantra, repeating an affirmation, just like over and over in my head if I have to do it the entire time I'm talking to someone. But yeah, that I definitely like what you said about, people we're real, we're human, we make our mistakes and we say things that aren't always right. So,
Yeah. I think in the teacher world, and I in no way is this making excuses for it. There's a lot of lineages in yoga that have had nutritional advice added in, and I can clearly tell you, as somebody who works in this field, nutrition has no place in yoga, especially when that person doesn't have nutritional training or has done a full intake with you. So that's, from a professional standpoint, unless they have a certificate of nutrition dietitian and they've done an intake with you, the human being. Like if you went to a nutrition and dietitian, they would do an intake. And with that said, not all of those professionals are safe either. There are plenty of dietitians and nutritionists out there claiming similar things. And so look at their training, look to see if they've worked with someone in the field before, or that, somebody with an eating disorder before, what training they have in that to help protect you. I think it's important that we hold our care community responsible, whether that's doctors, yoga teachers, yoga therapists. Um, it's tough. It's tough when the people that are around us will say, look, go to yoga, it'll help you. And then that yoga professional is cueing ED behavior. That's really tough. So it's okay to step away. That might be a little bit more challenging when you're in a training with them, but not take their advice. But I really love, Cami, that you no, and they're not open. So I can hear you've done your part to try to communicate and they're not open. Okay, got it. But you've really got that, like, I matter more than your opinion. My recovery matters more than your beliefs. I really love that. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else want to share, either from that part of the conversation or something that has shown up for you that's challenging? And that can be in the chat and so let's maybe shift to that. We talked a little bit about like what are some of the boundaries that we need. Um, Maybe let's shift a little bit to some of those challenges and speak about them authentically. Like clearly we've identified, out in community, there's challenging opinions, sometimes uneducated or unknown. I think for me, family, my family didn't know. My eating disorder was completely hid from them. In fact, my eating disorders before it was a diagnosable eating disorder, it's like back in the late 80s, early 90s, before it was even in the diagnostic guide. So not only was it hid from me, as far as what it could be, it wasn't in society. But I think that the behaviors were still there, they were still visible. And so for me, there was emotional eating and compensatory exercise. And the fact that it was so important to me, like that nobody really saw that, I think that was really hard for me, is that people would cheer me on of like how great I was doing, right? Like there's this like pat on the back about, oh, you're doing these great things and all of that. But underneath, I knew that something wasn't right. So for me, that was the biggest challenge, is that the behaviors that we're talking about are often not only taught in society, but cheered on in society, right? To like fit in and look a certain way or to be doing a certain type of exercise. I think that was really hard for me to have it validated, even knowing inside me that it wasn't helping. Yeah. And there's a share here from Katie. Triggered the other day by a friend telling me they only eat, I'm guessing that says eat once a day in the evenings. Um, Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, and going out for a meal with them and that part of like how other people's engaging in their relationship with food. Yeah, I think that's really hard, to see others with some level of disordered eating or eating disorder, whether it's acknowledged or not. Yeah, yeah. How about for you, Joel? Anything that you wanted to share about some of those challenges?
Um, I I definitely understand, as Katie is putting in the chat, like something that triggered her. I think like I relate a lot to that, like having like real world situations where you're around all sorts of different people. And for me, it shows up in my workplace where I'll hear my coworkers talk about how like, oh, they shouldn't have had X, or I shouldn't have done X without doing this. Like all of that kind of just really negative talk around food and body. And for me, it definitely can be really difficult to just kind of listen to that throughout the day. But I have to remember, like, I was out to eat with them recently, and someone made a comment about something that I had. And it definitely was like, kind of like shook me for a minute. And I was like, wait a minute, like, I don't need that. I can leave that there. Like, I don't need to take that in. That isn't for me. And I
Mhm.
don't need to hold on to that. And I was able to like really separate myself from that comment that was said because I was like, this is not something that I need to internalize. And that helped me a lot with getting through that scenario. And I know that like when I talk to like people that I mentor and people that I've worked with in that setting with through ANAD, that a lot of a lot of the times it is those real world situations where it's like, hey, my mom said this to me, or my friend said this. um, and for me, I'm always reminding them to just hold on to their recovery and what they know they need to do for themselves, because what's most important is our recovery and taking care of ourselves. And
Mm,
that's our utmost priority in life, is to take care of ourselves and our recovery.
yeah, thanks for sharing that. So there's two comments here, and I think they both really so beautifully stated. I love you guys are just like, let's just get right in it and be real, right? That there's this part about you can see that other person seems to be living a full life. They're doing what they're doing, and things seem to be okay. And because they do, right? Like they impact us. So how do I deal with the fact that it's impacting me and the result of that, but also that it feels like we're living by a different set of rules, right? Which is so true. Like so true. That there's things that appear to bother some people and don't bother others, or affect some people and don't affect others. Um, Jill, for you, what's that like? If you think about that sort of dichotomy, there's the part of me that's like we don't really know what's going on for that person. What we see is the Instagram filter version of people, like the part that we feel safe to show each other. So there's part of me that sees that, but I'll send it to you first. What do you want to say or hear?
I think that with it is so hard to know what someone else is going through. And I always try to live by the fact of like being kind and like treating everyone with kindness, because we don't know what other people are going through. And it's hard because we do see that surface level of like making comments or whatever may have come out the way it did. We see those surface levels, but we don't know about what's going on underneath. And I know for me, like I'm sure there were times in my life, in my when I was struggling, where I may have said things that like totally were just not the right thing to say in the moment, but it's because I was hurting and I was
Yeah.
struggling. Um, and it is hard when you are in recovery, because you do feel like you're living by like a different set of rules. I think that's like a really real feeling to have in recovery. Is just like, well, why can this person do this, but I can't? And
Yeah.
it's easy to get trapped in that kind of thinking. But it's also kind of like I try really hard to focus on what can I do each day to take care of myself? How can I nourish myself in every way, not just through food, but through every form of self-care that I can? Because at the end of the day, like we're living in our bodies, we're living with ourselves, and we have to know how to nourish and take care of ourselves.
I really love that. We talk about this a lot in our Eat, Breathe, Thrive programs of like, how do we care for all parts of ourselves? This is a very yogic way of thinking, right? There's our physical body, there's our emotional experiences, our social connection, like how I can get access to all of the brilliance inside of me. Like, am I intellectually tired or intellectually open? That there's so many different ways to consider our needs. And supporting those. I think that's a part of this too. And, it is harder over the holidays because we are getting an influx of messages around the meals, and all the sweets and the extra things that are there with that. And then, our food evaluation stuff gets heightened. But then there's also the holidays of like, all right, new year, new you. It's like, oh, it's like the worst part of the year because we're telling people to do all the things that we know this stuff is unhealthy. And yet and it's the very health organizations, the yoga studios and the gyms that are perpetrating this stuff. So we know that that's there, and it's tightened for everyone, right? Like at Eat Breathe Thrive, we work with people everywhere on the spectrum, from disordered eating, emotional eating, all the way to eating disorder. But people where it has nothing to do with food, where it might be about, I don't feel like my body belongs to me. I don't feel like I belong in my body, some of that dysmorphia. But it still shows up for everyone, right? And that's because we live in such an entrenched culture of diet. Um, so there is that acknowledgement that it is hard. And I think what's really important for me is to not step over the fact or self-gaslight or self-silence that this is really hard. So I love what you said about caring for yourself and caring for all the different things that we might need to care for ourselves about, that, the different ways we might care for ourselves, is really important to acknowledge, and that we don't need to do it alone. And so being in community, having that person, like I've call her my shame buddy because Brene Brown said that should be you call that person your shame buddy. Like, I can say anything to you and you're not going to fix me or solve me. You're not going to let me drown in it. You're just going to be with me. I think that can be really valuable, to have that person or that group where you can be like, listen, this is what's going on, and just be together with it. I think that's really valuable. And it can feel really lonely. Absolutely can be. That's why groups like this are so important. What are some other things that help? Let's get that from the group. What are some other things feeling, um, that impact, that being triggered, or whatever language feels safe, that impacted by things going on around you? What helps you? So I'll pass that question to you. Everybody has a chance to think about that.
Oh, I love someone already putting in mantras. That's one great example. Different bodies, different paths. I like that. Um, I love mantras. I love finding different ways to connect to my body. Like for me, I love yoga. That's a great thing for me. I also think having someone to lean on and be a good support is so important. I know for me right now, like we were talking about holiday seasons, and I'm seeing that a lot in my mentorship right now, where it's getting that time of year where people are getting anxious, and we're talking about, well, what are ways that we can cope? We can go outside, we can take a walk, we can get a breath of fresh air. Um, I know for me, when I'm in a stressful situation, sometimes my escape is just going to a certain room of the house that no one else is in and just breathing for a little bit. Because sometimes I just need to be away from all the noise, coming from a very large family. Um, but yeah, I definitely think journaling, that's another really great one. Um, I love getting creative. I love whether it's painting, I got model clay recently, just anything that I can find that I can just like get messy with. That's also a fun way. Doesn't have to even like, for me, I'm like, it doesn't look good, but that's okay. I got my hands dirty and that helped me distract, like get away from my head. And I think that's the important part, is like finding things that help you like kind of step back and just be
Mm.
like okay, I can take a minute. I'm gonna be okay.
I really love that. And there's some in the chat here too. So I saw journaling is definitely really helpful. I think that too, like reminding of the other person's humanity, you know, whether it's they're ignorant to the situation or whatever else, they might just be thinking they are helping and that what they're saying they think is helpful. And yet we know it's the last thing that's helpful. But yeah, remembering that the other person is a human being going through human being stuff. We call these at Eat, Breathe, Thrive, we call these vitally absorbing activities. And you were kind of describing it, Jill. So as you were talking, I was like, yeah, vitally absorbing activities. We talked about this in our yoga for eating disorder recovery program. And what we do is like look at all those things that we can get lost in, those things that like if you like read a book or get entrenched. I've been watching this show the last couple of days that I just 9 episodes, and somehow I got through all 9 in 3 days because it was just pulled me towards it. And being able to do something that really took my time and all of my capacity. So my thoughts are very focused on it, my emotions are very focused on it, my body's very focused on it. Yeah, like learning to crochet. So other people have said things like um, doing anything with clay or with your hands, gardening, getting your feet in water. I did pour painting. That was my big thing last year. I was going to do like one new thing a quarter, and I did 4 things, but the only one that really I was like, oh my goodness, I lost a day. You put a bunch of paints into a cup with some, it's called Floetrol. It makes it just more flowy. And then you put your canvas on and you flip it over and slowly pour the cup up. And the paint just you can't control it, you guys. The paint just does what the paint does, and you just get to be there with it and kind of move it around a little bit. And I had stuck a some sound on in my ears and just sat here doing it. And all of a sudden I looked up and it had been like 4.5 hours, and I used all the supplies I had bought to play with. Finding that thing where you can take a break and really just get in your body in some way and do something really pleasant that's up for you. That's self-care, right? Just something that's for you. So I love that you said sometimes that is just getting out of the room, finding some silence. Oh, such
That's
gold.
good. Someone said journaling, and I realized for me, when I was like beginning early in my recovery, I started writing songs, I started writing music, and that was my outlet. That was like the thing that really got me through. You reminded me of it with your paint experiment. And I think it is about finding that thing that just like really does take you away from it all.
Mm-hmm. I really love that. And I love, Sarah, you said here, staying in the present. I only have to decide what to do in this moment, not all moments. Oh, did everybody else feel that? Like, oh, such a beautiful reminder. I might write that down for myself. Well, why don't we take that to the yoga mat? So I'm gonna move over onto my mat over here in a second. So I'm gonna adjust it is hard to do. Let's apologize as well. I'm gonna add my other mat here over. Um, and so I want to say, you are welcome to be in your chair. You're welcome to be on the mat. You're welcome to sit or stand. I will cue what I see. So a reminder, if you're on camera, you're not being recorded, but it does help me to see where you are so I can help cueing that. And I'd like to take that as inspiration, what Sarah said. We need to be in this moment. We don't have to be in all the moments, but how do I want to care for myself in this moment? And let's start with some of Jewel's breathing. So I'm going to move over. Jewel, if you don't mind, I'm just going to move over here for a second, and then just let me know that you guys can hear and see me okay once I move over.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to switch my... Okay, switching my audio over. So can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to find a seat. So as I said, find it for you. And I think it's important to acknowledge, like, just as you find that, this is called easy seat. This pose is called easy seat. I think that's hilarious because it's not easy for most of us to sit like this. I just turned 50 this year. So this knee's a little, eek, I don't know about that. If I put my feet the other way, this knee hurts. So I'm going to find an easy seat, something that feels comfortable versus what the pose looks like. Take the intent. I want to be in an easy seat. So find something that's easy and comfy. And then let's start first off with some grounding. So I'm gonna have you just like roll around in your seat a little bit and just notice as you do that your sits bones are connected to what's below you, whether that's a chair or a mat or any other. I'm on a little pillow. So just notice that. Ground. And we're sending some information to the brain here. I always love this when my anxiety is high, like you can even touch the mat, give it a little patting. Or even notice gravity, that I can't float away right now. I'm actually connected to the earth, to the floor. So when my anxiety is up here, I find this helps me to like, oh yeah, brain, by the way, my feet are still on the ground, my bum's still on the seat. Let's take some time here to listen to our breath. So I'm going to invite you not to try to change it, to shape it, but to listen. So you might begin to notice even where you notice you're breathing in your body. Are there different places of your body that move? Are there places of your body where you can feel the breath as it makes its way in towards the belly? Can you notice the breath as it leaves the body? And get curious about your breath. Are there parts of the breath that feel easy? Are there places in the body where when the breath comes to it, displays a little tension or inflammation? Places of the body that are constricted of the breath? Not trying to shape it or fix it or solve it, but witness and be aware of how you're breathing right now. And just listen to how you're breathing. It can be this beautiful check-in, a little lighthouse, like, look over here. There's something to care for over here. So once you've noticed a bit about how you're breathing, gently and progressively, so again, not trying to fix the breath, just gently elongate our exhales. So let your inhale happen all by itself. Your body knows what to do. And just try to slow your exhale down just a little bit. If you find that it feels like there's a lot going on in your exhale, open your mouth, let it come out like a sigh. I need a couple of those. And see if you can find the cadence of your breath. Notice how long your inhale is, not by counting, but just noticing it. Maybe for you it's visual. There's some visual people in the room, so it might be like waves on a beach. The inhale, bringing that wave in towards the shore, and the exhale, the wave receding back to the water. And just finding that cadence, noticing the length of the inhale and the exhale. Feeling it move in and out of the body. So I'm going to invite some movement, and my invitation is to be in your own body, not mine. Breathing at your own pace and adding the movement to your breath. So we'll start out with a little bit of that cat-cow movement, and I'm just going to stay seated. If you'd like to move into a tabletop, you're welcome to, but I'm going to use my inhale to move into the pose. All of the inhales, like I'm slowing the movement down to go with pose. And your exhale to move to the opposing side. And find out which one works for you. Do you like the inhale on the cat or the inhale on the cow? Starting to listen in as you're breathing, following the breath first. You're moving at the pace of your own breath. And maybe what you want to pay attention to is any of those areas you notice constriction in your breathing that felt a little tight or were communicating to you. Just find a nice yummy stretch here that helps support that area of the body. Maybe there's a pause in your future to pause where you are in the pose. Or maybe it's the movement that really starts to help. You can start to build that movement into a bit of barrel rolls here, making big circles in the body. And using that to listen into the areas of the breath that might need a little love and support. If you're like me, I woke up with a little bit of tension in the right side of my spine today. So I'm giving it some, I'm not trying to like pull out tension, but rather love into the tension, support what I'm finding with some compassion. Taking a couple more breaths here, supporting any area of the breath that needs a little love for at the moment. And you're welcome to stay here or follow along on the journey. This is Yogi Choice Day, so you choose what your path is. So when you're ready, if you want to join me, I'm going to bring my hands in front of the body, connecting palm to palm. And I'm going to come back to my breathing and find that breath. So I'm going to use my inhales, reaching my arms up overhead. Taking the whole inhale breath there, opening up on my exhale, opening up wide, wide, wide. Slow that exhale down a little bit, bringing my hands back to heart center. And again, at my own pace. Just notice that little pause in between the inhale and the exhale, and then inhaling up. Exhale, open up as wide as feels comfortable in your body today. So we're now listening a bit to that front body. So if it feels tight, don't try to push through it. Just lovingly open the heart space. Compassionately reaching into what feels comfortable in that space. Let's do two more. You notice that you've lost the movement with your breathing. Just pause, find your breath, and then add the movement back in at any point in our practice today. So once you've completed those two circles, you can bring one hand down to the mat beside you. And I'm actually going to bring over my block because I'm sitting on a cushion. And if you're on a chair, you can just take your hand, hold on to the side of the chair, or press your fingers towards the side of the chair, whatever feels comfortable there, just to find that place of support. I'm going to inhale, reach the other end up, reach really nice and tall, drop those shoulders as you reach for the moon or the sun, whatever feels like the place you're reaching for right now, where you are in the world. Let's take a nice inhale in, exhale, fold to the side. So you can bend that elbow or you support you that you don't fall from your chair. Breathe in for one breath into the side of the body as though making lots of space in that rib cage to breathe, to have space for your breath. And let's inhale back up and switch to the other side. So find your grounding point first. Inhale the arm up, shoulders down, fingers reaching away. Exhale to the side. And then really see if you can feel that breath making space on the side of the body. See what that feels like to breathe into the left side of your body here. Inhaling back up. And this time when we come down, so I'm going to plant my hands, grabbing my other block, so I'm not switching. So this time I'm going to grab my hand, reach up with my inhale, exhale over the opposite knee. So I'm going to reach forward on an angle, reach, reach, reach. If you're on the ground, you can bring that hand down if you want, or if you're on your chair, you can let it rest on your knee versus out in space, or out in space, whatever feels good here. Breathe in a bit to the back of the body now. Feel the breath through the back as you breathe in and out. On an inhale, when you feel ready, Take that time to switch, move to the other side, reaching up first, nice stretch in the body, big tall spine. Exhale forward over the right knee. And again, find your hand placement wherever you want it. Breathe into the back of the body. Inhaling up when you're ready, back to center. And then listen, maybe there's a little counter pose here you'd like. Do you want a little rolling around? Again, exploring that breath space. So that whole top of the body where the breath living in. And just notice, are there any places that still would like some love, some compassion, places that feel different than they did before? Not looking for answers, just curiously. Okay, so let's take a few breaths together and let's come back to that cue. I only need to decide how I feel today, like in this moment. This is what the moment I'm living in. And I love that in our breath, we can actually only breathe in this moment. I can't breathe into the future and I can't breathe into yesterday. So let's try doing a few breaths here. I'm going to practice some Ujjayi breathing. And so if you haven't heard of Ujjayi before, that's okay. I'm going to share it with you. I like to call it Darth Vader breath because that's how I know I'm doing it right. I sound a bit like Darth Vader. So if you know what to do, feel free to dive in, but I'm going to ask you to dive in really gently, nice and slow, sort of progressively move into the practice. And for those of you that are new to Ujjayi, I'm going to share it with you. So I'm going to bring my palm of either hand up and put it in front of my mouth. And then take a deep inhale in. As you exhale, open mouth. So as though you're trying to fog your hand, like it's a mirror. Try to fog the hand. So inhale. Out. Inhale again. Out. Breath on the hand. Everybody feel that? Yeah. Okay, great. So that's what we're trying to do with our inhale breath and our exhale breath is we're going to put a little constriction on the back of the throat to cause that sound and then close our mouths. So you can close your mouth now. A little constriction right around the middle of the neck. Take a breath in. So it'll sound a little bit like wheezing. So there's like a little constriction in the breath. Like if you're a puppy snore, that's what it sounds like a bit. Now, you can choose to keep that constriction for the inhale or not. That's the beauty of Ujjayi. You can play with what feels helpful. So let's just take 10 breaths with that slight constriction, knowing you can stop at any time. Listen to your own body. So if you find yourself getting dizzy or feeling lightheaded, I'd invite you to stop and then just return back to gentle, slow exhales. If you are taking that inhale with the constriction, it can feel a little bit like sucking air through a straw. So again, if that brings up any anxiety, just soften it, return it to the exhale. As you're breathing through Ujjayi or a regular breath, I'm going to invite you to consider one word or two words for how you want to feel in this moment. Setting a gentle intention. knowing you can end the breath, returning to your natural breathing at any time. Got about 2 more breaths here. Breathing at your own pace. And if you haven't found a word, that's okay. Maybe I'll give a couple you can pick from. Maybe it's compassion, peacefulness, ease. So returning back to your natural breath. Let's do a little bit of support into the lower body now. So if you're seated like I am, I'm going to come into a bit of a seated windshield. And again, if you'd rather lie down for your windshield, you can. So I'm just going to bring my legs a little bit further open, hands in behind me, and sway my knees from side to side. And taking your time to do that with your breath. If you're in your chair, sit further forward on your chair. Let your feet kind of relax a little bit further open, your knees open, and then you can just work on swinging them from side to side. So just finding your own version of windshield wherever you happen to be. Bringing yourself back to that breath, moving in your windshield with your inhales and your exhales. Again, listening for any sensations that your body is sending to you. Maybe it says, ooh, that's tight there, or hey, that feels good. Can we stay? Just listening in, honoring what you find, swaying from side to side, or maybe for you, there's a pause. Listening into one side, breathing into the body. Doing a couple more windshields on both sides. Coming back to your center. When you feel complete, so the last pose for our practice is going to be a low lunge for those of us that are on our mats. So if you're low lunge, bringing one of your feet forward. Lunge just means that your pelvis is in front of the back knee. So your lunge can be as little or as much as you want. But the thing to listen into in your lunge are those hip flexors, the muscle groups in the front of the leg here. So listen in to find a yummy stretch, not something that changes your breathing. It feels kind of like, ooh, that feels like I need that. For those of you that are seated, I'm going to invite a figure 4. Oh, I'm actually going to grab my stool so I can show you that. So from your seated position, I'm going to take one leg, bring it up past the opposing knee. Keep that foot nice and flexed, so toes pointing away from the body. That's going to help to engage the muscles around the knee to protect it. And gently lean forward. Only as much as you find. Again, find some yummy sensation, something that feels like, oh, I kind of need this. This feels good in my body. And you can play with coming in and out, or even play with forward folding a bit more or a bit back to find, once one yummy sensation feels like it's had what it needs, you can move to the next one. So I'm going to come back to that low lunge for those of you that are there. The same thing when you're doing your low lunge, there is a counter pose. So if you're in your lunge, you feel like, ooh, maybe that's enough sensation for this moment. Press into that front foot, bring the bum back behind you. You can have your blocks here. I actually want mine, so I'm going to grab them. So that front foot, you can have your toes down or bring them up. You can actually play there. You get a nice little massage in the back of the leg. And then come back towards your low lunge. Remembering to breathe in whatever pose you're in. Taking care of yourself to come in and out of that sensation as desired. I try to remember, and Julie was saying, like, sometimes I just need to step out of all the noise, all the sensations. You are allowed to step out of poses, out of situations where you need a pause or a break to care for yourself. So practice that in your pose today. You've got about 3 more breaths here, then we'll move to the other side. Coming in and out of sensation as desired. When you begin to think about your transition, coming out of the pose that you're in, and maybe you want a little bit of movement. So if you're in chair, you could do some of those seated cat-cows we did. I'm going to come down to a tabletop, a little bit of cat-cow or barrel rolls here. I'm taking a few breaths here to have a moment just to care for anything that's needed in the body. And when you're ready, you start working towards the other side, really intently listening newly. Try to match the other side. This is a whole different side of the body going through a whole batch of different things. So how far back your knee is or how forward you fold in your chair might be different. So listen in with compassion, curiosity. Where's the just right? I think about the Goldilocks and the 3 bears on this. Where's the porridge that's just right? Look for that in your pose today. The just right for this moment. Taking those counter poses of reaching back in your low lunge or sitting up in your fold if you sit on a chair. Taking your time to breathe into whatever pose you're in, supporting your body, supporting your mind. Got about 10 more breaths left in this pose. Dropping into listening to your own body and yourself here. Caring for your needs in this moment. Knowing you can come out at any time. Do a short meditation here to end our practice. So shifting into something that feels comfortable when you're ready. Listen to your body. Is there some sort of counter to the practice we just did that your body still needs? So maybe those barrel rolls or cat-cows. And then my invitation is to find the most comfortable position you can find. The most comfortable position you can find, the most easeful, yummy, this feels good. Oh, that looks great. Warm little blanket. I love that. See if you can support your back and spine and your body in a way that feels really easeful. So for some, that might be lying down. For others, that might be leaning back in your chair. What's the most easeful pose for you in this moment? And then begin breathing into the body, noticing that breath. Gently deepening the breath. Begin to take the deepest inhale that fits in your body in this moment. Allowing all the air out on your exhale. Inhale fully. Exhale fully. And if it feels comfortable today, I invite you to bring a hand over the heart space, maybe both hands if that's what's there for you today, but find a comfortable way to do that. So perhaps today you want something underneath the elbows to support your elbows. Just breathing into that heart space. And I'm going to invite you to bring someone to you to mind, someone you feel safe with and dear to you, that you love them and they love you. You feel safe with them. And just notice them with your mind's eye, a safe distance away from you. And begin to invite the feelings of being with this person into your body. What's it like to be in this safe space of love and care? Invite it to be felt in all the corners of your body. What it's like to feel safe and loved and cared for. Notice these sensations wherever you feel them. And let's name these sensations compassion. This is what compassion feels like in your body. This is where compassion is felt in your body. And I'm going to invite you to turn those sensations of compassion towards yourself. This is what compassion for yourself feels like in your body. And any time that you feel that's hard to do, it's okay to turn back to that loving person that makes you feel safe and loved and cared for. Invite those feelings of compassion back into your body. And then turn them back towards yourself. No matter how many times you need to repeat that, this is just the practice of embodying compassion. And 10 more breaths. Continue to be with compassion in your body, turning it towards yourself. And at any moment, you are worthy of this compassion. That you can take a break, check in with yourself for a compassionate breath. 30, whatever you need. And let's let the practice soften now, knowing you can come back to this at any time. This is now in your toolbox. Me starting to add some gentle inhales and movement, whatever feels good to bring you back to the room. I want to thank you all for being with us today and for my amazing co-facilitator. It's been lovely to meet you and get to work with you today. You will receive an email from our team here at Eat, Breathe, Thrive, giving you information about both of our organizations and how you can reach support as you need it, especially over these challenging holidays. Please know you always have community with both at AMAD and here at Eat, Breathe, Thrive. And it's been a real honor to be with you today. Jewel, any last thoughts or words that you'd like to share?
That was a needed practice, and I'm very thankful for that. And yes, please look out for that email and just know that we're here for you and you have the support available. And thank you guys all for being here. It's been awesome.
I'm glad that it also supported you as well. There was a question in the chat about when our next recovery and yoga chat's going to be. We are working on that schedule for 2025. It will be very soon. If you're looking for another community event, there's a How We Recover event. So that'll be in our email, but also our event list where you can keep up to date on those upcoming events. And I love that you're asking. It means that this is helpful and you want to be at the next one. So that's wonderful to hear. Thank you all for being here. It's been lovely to be with you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
You're so welcome, Cami. Bye. Jewel. You rule, Jewel. Did you catch that? All right. Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Thanks again.